Okay, at this time I will call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Lawton City Council to order. Please stand for the invocation by Pastor Gary Pratt of Lawton First Assembly and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heavenly Father, we first of all thank you for this day. We thank you for the wonderful rain that we've had and for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. Your word says in Proverbs chapter 8, "By me, speaking of wisdom, kings reign and rulers make laws that are just. By me princes govern, and all nobles who rule on earth. I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me." Today, Lord, we thank you for all of our civil servants. Thank you for their hard work, their sacrifice, and may you continually bless them. May you generously give to each of them wise and discerning hearts to skillfully govern the people in our city. I pray, Lord, you would give the mayor, city leaders, staff, city council. I pray, Lord, you'd give them wisdom so that they may solve problems, distinguish between right and wrong, and bring order, stability, and prosperity to our community. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. And thank you, Pastor Pratt. Please call the roll.
Chapman, Burke, Hampton, Fortenbaugh, Johnson, Warren, Hankins, Harris.
And that brings us up to presentation, Employee Spotlight Award to Taylor Orosky. I hope I said that right. Animal Welfare Division. Michael? Come on up, Taylor. Come on up.
We really enjoy these times when we get to present awards and accomplishments, and we get to spotlight some of our employees. So it's my pleasure to present Taylor with the Employee Spotlight Award. Taylor has worked in the Lawton Animal Welfare for almost 4 years, and his current position being an animal welfare officer. This position is demanding, and Taylor gives his all. This June, he was on call for 2 weeks, 24/7, and always answered the phone with a positive attitude, regardless of what time of day or night it was. Taylor remains calm and professional during any issues that may arise, and he displays outstanding customer service, going above and beyond his responsibilities to ensure the citizens of Lawton are taken care of. Taylor gives up his weekends and time with family to serve the Lawton community in their time of need. Employees like Taylor are a great value to the city of Lawton, and his dedication reflects great credit upon himself and his division. Thank you, Taylor, for your hard work and your dedication. We appreciate you, and thank you for all you do for our citizens every day.
Round of applause. Thank you, Taylor.
So, Mayor, if you'll indulge me for one more minute, I had a last-minute one that we want to recognize, and that's Harley Van Winkle. Where's Harley Van Winkle? And while Harley's coming up, I want to tell you about this young lady. She works in our finance department, and Harley just obtained her CPA. So we're going to celebrate Harley's passing of the CPA and her designation as such, and I want to present her with a coin and thank her for all her hard work, and we expect great things from her. So Harley, here you go. Here you go, bro.
Thanks, bro.
Get a picture. We got to have a picture. All right, we're proud of her. Let's give her one more round of applause. That moves us up to reports by the mayor and city council. We're going to start with Ward 1. Okay. Okay. Ward 5, 6, talkative bunch today, 7, 8. No reports. Okay. Now we move to audience participation. Anyone having an item of business to present to the city council that does not appear on the agenda, please come forward at this time. Okay, I don't see anybody, so we're going to move on. Now, we have a challenge today because for whatever reason, we only have 6 voting members present, and we have one that has to leave early. It will take us to 5. That's getting too close for comfort, and we are going to have to go to executive session now. I apologize for making you wait. I need a motion to go to executive session.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Hampton. Yes. Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Warren. Hankins. Chapman.
Be back as quick as we can. I'm sorry we don't have cookies.
ask you a question?
Don't want to rip that page and let Tino fix it all. Fix it all. Or fix it. Yeah. No, there wasn't. Every team, medium. Those are headaches. You start working on everything. Make it a little bit fun for advertisement. Just trying to get the ball or something Thursday or Friday. We did want to get so I'll double check that. I showed a file in the Dropbox folder, but I think I'll just resend it just to make sure that. Because I went back through in the stormwater issue. Some of it will be a contractor and some of it is but to get to the mid. Cannot get not a Superman.
Hopefully.
I skipped lunch. I didn't get that That's rubbing salt in.
Everything go okay this morning?
Yeah. Yes, 56 years old. Shit, and got over the COVID. Treated she started doing the fluids and sponges on her heart. It was tough and stuff. Her sister, she has a sister. We're religious. It's easier to deal with it.
hard to understand. Is she the youngest?
Yes, she was the youngest. She was 13 when Sharon and I met.
Oh my goodness. So she's kind of got like a bunch of moms.
Yeah, she was like a little sister to me.
Absolutely.
She was one of the bridesmaids as a teenager. I think she was 15.
Wow. Where they live? You said in Chandler.
Chandler. Her husband been on the police force in Tulsa. They did not have children. She had one child. She got married and had one child. He's the same age as
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to understand.
basically the outcome of the COVID.
Make sure that long COVID. Wow. How terrible to find things.
There's not any good time, but that's that right there. Takes the wind out.
Well, you're getting excited about some coverage.
I'm sure hoping for that. You know, last year had more potential. It was still a good season. It was still a good season, especially with beating the
Cleveland did fine as well. And
If it took Baylor out, then it would have been a great season.
that's true.
And the way we lost to Baylor was just
Wrong.
classic.
He deserved to. We didn't win that. They didn't win that game.
Yeah, it was ours. We did everything we could to make sure they
They
won.
won. Only make like what, 4 or 5 turnovers in a game. So OU, OSU is at OU this year. Would you be interested in going?
Yeah.
Had tickets? You better be the one to go this time.
I sure hope I'm not sick this time. Well, I was sick.
Yeah, you were. I'll see if I can round up some tickets for you. I was trying to think, OU Baylor is there too. You're I came by the office like today. He's feeling better. You know, ever since
He's squeezing. I need him in the evenings and stuff. I don't have to say this necessarily. I don't want him to hurt himself. Oh, well, I agree that it probably is, but not with 110.
No.
When it's cool.
Yeah, if it's like it is today, or no matter that one.
Yeah. He was out there on the side of the 105 degrees. You don't really do that. You go in there and look at the numbers, talk to people. I was concerned. Now she shared some concern. I think for real. His guidance and wisdom is
You need that more than you need him walking around.
him walking around looking.
Right. We were actually talking a little bit about that. He's going to continue to stay. He's getting really frustrated. I'm sure he shared that.
Well, you know how frustrated I get.
Yes, sir.
When I started talking to him,
I've had somebody reach out to me a manager, good size, top five house, I used to say, "Are you serious?" And she would be like, "Hi, how can I help you?"
It comes into my ears,
Oh,
so
great.
my hearing aids.
Oh, it's connected to your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It answers me.
Yeah.
Who's talking to me?
God?
We went to Red Lobster. Of course, my granddaughter said, "I want my phone to play." I forgot to turn the hearing aids off of it, and I got hearing this noise and looking for, and then it dawned on me that she was playing a game on the phone, and
That's really cool.
started looking around, so he was talking to her.
Oh gosh, kids and phones, man.
They just had the first week back, right? The first couple of days back.
Yeah, the youngest one started school in
Oh, like kindergarten or first grade?
preschool.
Pre-K, okay. Is it all day pre-K?
It's all day. And her and the oldest one, they walked down to the school across the country. Belgium, they moved out there, and they live about a block and a half from the school. So they walked down to school. I wasn't worried about the responsibility of the 12-year-old. I was worried about the little one listening to the 12-year-old. Because she has her own mind.
You've said that before.
And she exercises it. And Friday evening she was exercising. She squared off and hugged her older sister because she didn't like what she was telling her to do.
Oh my gosh, like in the face?
She can't reach her face unless she leans down. The oldest 12-year-old is now 5'7".
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's tall.
Is their daddy tall?
No, I'm the tallest one in the family.
How tall are you now?
Right now, I'm 6'1", but I was 6'4".
Oh, okay.
Before I started shrinking, before the back surgeries and stuff.
Sharon's not, and Charlotte's not tall.
Charlotte's second tallest.
Is she?
But she's that much taller than Sharon and my other daughter.
Funny.
She's about like that much shorter than Charlotte.
Well, she might keep growing.
At 12, she probably will reach 6 foot.
I haven't grown since I was 12. The same size as a little girl before. I was a giant in 5th grade. Oh. So, I didn't realize they went to school in Elgin.
Yeah, they just started it. They went to school here in Lawton. His grandmother's house, Sanitary.
Oh, yeah.
Been getting the house here ready to sell.
I hear is that one that you've been re-roofing? And
I re-roofed it back in the spring, and the house is totally renovated over the 10 years they've had it. So,
How much is your cut?
I'm just lucky I don't have to make a payment on it. She's not sharp but she's still covering it. And it's really
In order to move up, you have to identify your replacement.
She's not getting ready to start interviewing for a position. She's found one of the state inspectors. He'd worked with her.
That's great.
I think she's come back with licenses and meds.
Are we still helping out on the
They haven't sent any out. She's got a bunch of them. There's this little bitty packet. Some of them. I told her she's got a PO open for y'all. Need to get this. If you can get to them, send them to them right away.
That's a hard thing to do. You're like, I can get to it. It's just
She's full time doing admin management stuff.
was glad too that they had they covered the water quality management advisory council. Did you hear how they're changing? Did you hear about the big hubbub?
No,
They took away all water quality monitoring, testing, something that the water board did.
I remember Julie when she was just starting. I thought it was
That's what I mean. But other than also, I mean, most states, the water quality, what sets the limits, and then who enforces them, is generally sanitary, so it makes sense. But what the state didn't do is provide any of the, when you heard this, but they didn't provide any of the financial or any of the positions for which responsibility.
so that means that it's not going to get done up
They
there.
have positions at the water board that have literally nothing to do, and they have all these positions that they need to open and fill.
But no money to pay
No
for it.
money to pay for it.
That sounds like,
It sounds like, yeah, it sounds about like legislature. So, yeah, we will see how that, but anyways, as part of that committee now, we have to pass the rules that the legislators have already enacted for statute. So we have to, yeah, we have to draft and adopt them so that the DEQ is now in compliance with the state law. Just, but no way to pay for it. What a mess. But it's like, this was an emergency meeting thing, and they called it, and they've never done that before. So when I was like, I'm not going to be able to make it. But no, they were able to like, make sure they had a quorum. It's crazy stuff that's going on right now. Yeah, this is where we got stung by a centipede. It was a millipede. This big, long guy. I was just literally walking through the patio at this restaurant because it's all outdoors. And I was like, ow! I like did this and then my foot swelled up and then, well, I saw this thing like slither away kind of and then somebody's like, what was that? And I was like, that's who did this. It was the weirdest thing in the world. It was mean and ugly looking. It looked like a snake.
yeah, the ones here are definitely not hurt you. They look mean and ugly, but they don't have nothing.
Yeah, this one has these long. I guess it's a centipede. Millipede just means.
Centipedes look meaner than centipedes.
Yeah, they're like roly-polies with a lot of legs. Right now. Yeah, this one was a angry, ugly stinger. I must have stepped on it, not knowing, reached up and not sure. Wheel? Here. Not in a hurry, really.
Really, ever. The big part.
I had to get a cup of coffee. I'm being honest. I was maybe some liquid energy.
have to, we would have to be, it would have to all be W1. Which we're having to do W1 because of our protection.
Is your Southeast plant back up and?
We were only down 20 hours. It's slow bringing it back up. Once you start loading up manganese and explosives, it takes a while. Texting will go to 50. Back up to full capacity, we're running about 75%. But the water quality after you start pumping the wells were, it went for 18, 20 hours.
And you have to use it before they give you uses.
Do you have that David Grace contact info?
David Taylor.
Yes, it is. But I stopped smoking, so I guess I was so bad having
One of the girls' games.
What game do they play?
The one that really likes David Dowd.
Oh, I see. Oh, one of those games.
I got this one on my phone. No, I mean, it was poker.
I've got it.
Oh, yes.
Well, but it was supposed to be Jesus. Instead of
Butterfly.
From Fort Wayne.
Furnishing the 6 of them is going to ship last weekend. plus, I think I had 750 is what I had, plus engineering, probably about 900,000. No, water's on site. Sure would like to. Just a little different. I like it more. Last time I went. I don't like it when we start.
Okay, we're back from executive session. Please call the roll.
Hampton, Fortenbaugh, Johnson, Warren, Hankins, Chapman.
Okay, executive session, item number 31. John?
Pursuant to Section 307C11, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, council convened an executive session for the purpose of conferring on matters pertaining to economic development, including the transfer of property, financing, and creation of a proposal to entice a business to locate within the jurisdiction. I understand that there is a motion on this agenda item.
I move to approve the basic terms of the Blue Braveheart project to include the provision of a forgivable loan in the amount of $10 million based on the project providing 2,335 new jobs by the end of the 5th year of operation in accordance with City Council Policy 1-11, with said funding amount to be placed in an escrow account and released only after Blue Braveheart has obtained $126 million in development financing from other sources for completion of Phase 1 of the project, and further authorize the mayor to execute any documents necessary to proceed with the project.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the motion carries 6-0. That moves us on to the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted with one motion. Should discussion be desired on an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda prior to action and considered separately. Council, you might want to get your pen out, Mr. Warren. Item number 3, we are striking the Charles Wade claim. We are pulling the Nita Knight claim. We're pulling item 4. We're pulling item 14. Do we have any other items we want to pull, Council?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item number 3, the Wade portion to be stricken, and pulling the Nita Knight portion. Pull item number 4 and item number 14.
Do we have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries 6-0.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a procedural motion.
Yes, state your motion.
Because of the long agenda and all the people here, I think we should limit our debate and discussion to 3 minutes each on each item, so that we're not here all night and everybody else is not here all
Okay,
night.
thank you. We've done that before. Without objection, that will be the rule. Is there objection from the council? The rule will stand. Okay, so we're on item 3. Consider the following damage claim recommended for denial. Nita Knight in the amount of $4,976.28. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This damage claim stems from an incident that happened on June the 2nd of 2022. It has to do with the residential sanitary sewer overflow. So, short story, there was a block somewhere in the system, and it resulted in the sewer overflowing inside of a citizen's residence. And so wastewater treatment went out there and assessed the situation, flushed out 105 feet of the pipe. They found the blockage to be the result of I'll call them flushable wipes, but there's a debate as to whether or not they are or not, because that's what caused the blockage. So they're in the system. So as far as these pipe segments, you always have the main pipe segment that services the citizen's house. From that, you have a service line that goes to their house. And then you always want to look downstream at the pipe segments downstream where a blockage could occur, which did with the sanitary wipes. And then we look a distance downstream for so many pipe segments. This particular system, there was no history of any issues on the main segment, on the first, the second, the third, or the fourth pipe segment below. And our claims investigator generally goes back 3 years on those. This particular area, there was nothing on the sanitary sewer evaluation survey where they check to see if there's issues. And under Oklahoma law, when a municipality undertakes the process to maintain and operate a sanitary sewer system, they're not negligent unless they breach, they have a duty, which obviously we do, but we are not negligent if there's no prior notice, and that could be actual or constructive notice. And absent prior actual or constructive notice that there was an issue in that area, then the city is not liable. Now, going forward, we could be liable because there could, if we have indication that there's an issue with the pipe system as far as roots or something like that, that we could remediate. But for this initial incident, under Oklahoma law, it is legal's position, because we have no prior actual or constructive notice, that we're not liable under Oklahoma law. And I guess Mrs. Knight is here, and she might want to address her side of the issue.
Thank you, Chris. Ms. Knight, come on up, please.
Okay, I'm Nita Knight, and I live at 2308 Southwest 68th Street, and I have owned the rental property at 418 Northwest 74th for over 10 years, and I've never had a plumbing problem ever until June. And the house flooded, the tubs and the toilets all overflowed with sewer. I had Andy's Plumbing come out, and I watched them for 2 hours clean the lines all through the house. They did not find a single thing in my lines in my house. So they had the city come out and do a flush. And I have a paper from the city showing that they did find a block in the city line. And Andy's Plumbing told me that they found, their words, pulled back massive root balls from the city line. Not one word was ever said that day about wipes. The plumber or the city of Lawton did not say a thing about there being wipes in that line. So I feel like it was the roots, and I think the city needs to maybe maintenance those lines. When were they maintenance, to make sure that they're cleared of any tree roots? My property has absolutely no trees on it. So my line, it wasn't my tree roots blocking the city main. So if the council would please reconsider their denial, I would greatly appreciate it.
Council, do you have any questions for Ms. Knight? Okay, thank you very much for coming. You have any questions for Chris? You have a motion.
Ms. Knight, as we always mention in this wouldn't be the end if the council does deny this claim. You have the option to go to district court and seek satisfaction there. Simply because I feel like I have to go with legal. That's what we hired them for. And I'm going to make a motion to deny this claim.
I have a motion to deny. Is there a second? Second. And we do have a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion for denial carries 6-0. Moving us to item number 4. Consider amending the city manager's back to work and COVID-19 incentive policies to use previously approved and unspent portions of American Rescue Act Plan Act allocations to current and future employees that submit proof of vaccination and booster by extending the proof of vaccination deadline to December 31, 2022, and to amend the back to work incentive for new employees to $7,500 from the previous maximum incentive to $1,000. Eligibility for the back to work incentive will be based on a variety of different factors. Additionally, both incentives require an employee to satisfactorily perform their duties for 6 months before they can be considered. Employees hired after December 14, 2021 are required to satisfactorily complete 6 months of service. Craig.
Okay, good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Back on December 14th, 2021, we brought to the Council a tiered approach for payment of employees and future employees from ARPA funds. There was about $3.6 million initially placed into this fund, and we were going to pay a premium pay, a COVID incentive pay, and also a back to work pay. The council approved the whole package as it was, but then it was very recently, like a day or two afterwards, the initial way that the COVID incentive was written is that anybody that showed proof of being vaccinated fully, to include a booster, by June the 30th of 2022 would get the incentive pay. Well, it was a day or two after y'all passed this whole package that we realized, you know, if we do this for June 30th of 2022, that only gives current employees and future employees about a 3-week window to start their vaccination, because it takes about 6 months to get fully boosted. So there was discussions held about extending the vaccination through December the 31st of 2022. I'm going to take a hit on this one, because I really thought of all the discussions that we had on this that I actually brought it back to the council, but it comes to find out that we did not. So that's one thing that we're doing today, is bringing it back to the council to see if we can extend it through December the 31st for employees that weren't vaccinated that have been vaccinated by now, and also new employees. Any new employee that gets hired right now, if they have not started their vaccination, are not going to be able to get done with their booster by the end of the year. It's going to be those employees that are already here and those employees that may be hired that have already been boosted, or they're close to getting their final boosting shot. Secondary part on this is you also approved a back to work incentive to get people to come back to work after COVID, and it has helped some. We have hired some people on that back to work incentive, but it's unfortunate that we are still close to the same amount that we had before. So what we're proposing now is that we increase this back to work incentive to try to incentivize more people to come back to work, because there are others out in the community that are offering more than the $1,000 that we initially had approved to come back to work. So that's where we're at now, and I know there's some questions on it.
So the reason I pulled this item was for that clarification. There's really two things here. In discussion that I had after the agenda came out, it was clear there was appeared to be some opposition to this. So I know it's important that we pass a date extension because people hired in June were probably told they qualify for this, but it takes till December to qualify, correct?
Correct. They would qualify once they get their vaccination and their booster handed in to us. And as long as they do that by December 31st, they would qualify.
So anybody that would qualify for that is already hired?
Now, you could have some people get hired between now and then that's already boosted. If they already have their vaccinations done, now if we keep it on June 30th, it's over. Everybody's done.
Right.
But if we extend it to December 31st to have the proof of it in, then somebody could get hired and already be vaccinated and boosted and then still qualify.
Okay, so I do remember these discussions, and it was an honest mistake that it fell through the cracks. There was discussions, and it was intended to bring back, but a lot happens, and it didn't. The increase in the back to work is a completely separate deal, and so do you have questions or motions?
Mayor,
Yes.
when we say this comes from ARPA funds, which ARPA funds are we talking about? Is that $9 million or is that a different one?
That was the first iteration of ARPA funds that the city received, so that was FY 2021. And to clarify that a little bit further, it will only be for the remaining funds that were not paid out when you subtract the premium pay from that. So whatever that remaining amount is, and Craig would have to give you the exact number, when that's all done, it's done. You guys initially approved $3.608 million, so whatever is remaining is only dollars out there that this could be applied toward, and once it's gone, it's gone.
We have approximately $826,000 left of that initial $3.6 million.
Okay. There's just to make a comment, there's one thing about this that I'm having trouble getting over.
Okay.
And that is, we just raised taxes, or we raised the utility bills and fees on the citizens by 15%. And we told them we had to do that to have enough money to just barely operate or whatever we said. And now we're talking about giving up to $7,500 in hiring bonuses to people. The message, those two things don't sync up to me. I mean, if we're short on money, we're short on money. I think the problem is that we're all having trouble finding employees. We need to figure out why that is. What's causing us not to be able to get them? But just giving them money, I just doesn't seem like that's going to help.
Mr. Fortenbaugh, this is under the ARPA Act. This is one of the allowable ways to spend ARPA dollars. So the premium pay, the back to work incentive, and the COVID incentive are allowed under the guidelines of the Act. So we can only spend this money on this particular issue or something related that's allowed in the ARPA Act, like water or sewer type projects. So this was an authorized expenditure of those funds. And I know that it doesn't seem like to me they're separate issues because it can only be spent in one particular area.
Other questions, comments, or motions?
I'd just make one comment that I understand, the difficulty in hiring. I know I'm having problems. This is not being spent any different than it was originally intended to be spent. The money was earmarked for this type of spending for incentives one way or the other. So I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Is that a motion for approval of the entire item? Okay, I have a motion for approval of the entire item. Is there a second? Have a motion for approval of the entire item. Is there a second? There is no second, so the motion dies for lack of a second. Is there any motion on this to extend the date or any part of this?
Mayor, I would make a motion to extend the current program we have in place until December 31st of 2022, but without the increases in hiring incentives.
Okay, so we have a motion to extend the date of the current program to December 31st, 2022, but without the change in incentive amounts. Did I say that right? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, somebody did second? Okay. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 6-0. Brings us up to item 14. Consider approving professional design services agreement with H.W. Lochner for the design of replacing two bridges at 11th Street on Wolf Creek, M94-2 and M94-3, rehabilitation of two bridges at Cash Road, M09-1 and M09-2, and replacing Northeast 29th Street Bridge over Ratton Creek, M14-4, project EN 2106. Joe Painter.
Mayor and Council, so these bridges we've talked about briefly before. The 11th Street bridges are done. They're the ones going to landfill. They need to be replaced. The Wolf Creek or Cash Road bridges that go over Wolf Creek need to be repaired. We had to reduce the load rating, and we have our ladder trucks can't cross those bridges anymore. So once we make these improvements, we'll be able to increase the load rating back up where they'll be able to cross the bridges again. And then the Northeast 29th Street Bridge is the one that we had to close permanently because it didn't meet any current standards and parameters, so we need to get it replaced completely also. It's a little smaller structure, so it's not as big a project, but we're hoping you'll approve this contract because we want to get everything under design. We hope to try to get some grant money to work on one, if not all of these bridges, maybe as separate packages or all together as one package. We don't know yet. But we're way better off when we approach these grants having plans in hand. It puts us ahead of our competitors trying to get the same money. So that's what we're requesting now, is that a contract to do the design for the construction plans so that we'll be in a better bartering position to go for grant money.
Okay, so we have an item where we're going to receive a presentation on bridges. Will these bridges be?
Later on, under business item, we were going to update you on all your bridges to give you a perspective
Including
of the
these.
condition of all the bridges in Lawton.
Okay, including these.
Yeah,
Okay,
these aren't
thank
only
you.
bad bridges. So.
And the reason I pulled this is because the funding source is Propel CIP. And while we can use the money from the CIP for the engineering, there's not the money in the CIP to fund the replacement of the bridges. And I want everybody to understand that. And I would ask for a motion for approval.
I move that we approve this. I think we have to. I mean, I don't think we have a no-brainer.
Did I hear a motion? Okay, so we have a motion for approvals or second. We hear a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 6-0. That brings us up to business items, and we have another change. We have Dave Taylor, who is the director of the Warricka Water. I'm trying to find that number. It's number 26. And Dave is the Warricka Conservancy District, and he has a presentation for us, and he has to be at another council meeting before too long. So we're going to bring 26 forward and receive a briefing from Cornerstone Consulting Group and Dave Taylor, Warricka Conservancy District, and provide direction to staff. The Cornerstone Consulting Group and the Warricka Conservancy District concerning community submitted projects seeking state-controlled American Rescue Plan Act funds. And we have Mark Yates.
Okay.
All that about Dave Taylor, and we get Mark Yates.
I told him I'd tee it up for Dave. So, no, thank you. Mark Yates, Cornerstone Government Affairs. Happy to be here on behalf of the city. And to give just a brief update on where we are in the activity in terms of ARPA and the process in which the state legislature is going through currently. As you all are aware, the legislature took control of about $1.875 billion to go through a process of vetting various projects around the state. As you can imagine, communities around the state all have a laundry list of desires and needs, and the legislature is going through all of those projects that have been submitted through the portal and trying to determine which ones meet the criteria from Treasury guidance in terms of how they can spend those dollars and what projects are going to be the most impactful. In terms of Lawton and kind of the region, we had nearly $768 million of ARPA requests in the portal and have tried to narrow those down to some priorities that certainly fit right in line with Treasury guidance in terms of infrastructure, water, sewer. And so Dave's going to come up in just a moment, but one of those projects that have gained a lot of traction with the legislature is the Warricka Lake project of nearly $18.5 million. The conversations that we're currently having with leadership in both the House and the Senate have gone very well. We're hopeful that Dave will be at the Capitol within this next month time frame to kind of give the public comment and hearing. And then from there, it goes to the ARPA Joint Committee for approval, and then it will be sent to the governor's desk, of which he will obviously have the ability to sign or veto. We are hearing that late September, early October, the legislature is planning to put together a revenue package of these ARPA projects that could total a sum nearly $1 billion, and to push that to the governor's desk by sometime in October. Additionally, beyond the Warricka Lake project, we've also gained some traction with the Lake Ellsworth Rehabilitation project on the spillway. That project totals $20 million. And again, so far the conversations in both the House and the Senate have gone very well. And so those two projects are tracking in the right direction, which would be nearly a total sum of $40 million. So that's all I have in terms of a high-level overview, and I'll kick it to Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here again. I always like being here because I get to catch up with old friends and make some new ones, and so thank you. I'm Dave Taylor. I've been down at Warricka Lake for 18 years now. Doesn't seem like it's that long, but my wife was pregnant when we moved here, and now that child just started college this week. Yay! So we are officially empty nesters. I'm not sure how to behave in that regard right now. My mission, you've got some things in front of you, but my mission was, as Mark was gaining traction, I think he said that 3 times, with the legislature and so forth to try to get everyone to support our projects. My mission was to go out and get all the cities to do this instead of this, and that included Lawton, Duncan, Comanche, Warricka, Walters, and Temple. So now they have not taken action. You all are the first one. You're kind of the lead on this, not taking any action to support that. But what they told us was that to really get the traction, to get that $18 million, that 25% of it we would have to come up with some of that. So I'm going to the cities and saying, if you just support that, we'll figure out a way to get the money. But that's what we're doing. So far, all the cities have said, hey, if we're going to spend $1 and get $4 back, that's a pretty good deal. And so that's where we are now. Warricka itself, we are a regional water supply. There's as much water in Warricka Lake as all the other lakes in the 6 cities combined. So, and you can look through this list, but probably another very important thing to know is that at some point in any year's time, Lawton is using the Warricka facilities 100% of the time. Now, you're not using it all flowing the same direction. Some of it's pumping, some of it's, excuse me, some of it's pumping, some of it's gravity, but Lawton is using Warricka facilities 100% of the time, and it's mainly to support the Southeast plant. Now, the projects that we're looking at are on the second page here. We're at the point after 50 years, We need to start replacing the power lines and the transformers to the project. This is a huge facility, $1.5 billion to replace. We've got very large transformers, a lot of transmission lines. We're kind of like a small city on our own. And we also need to install variable speed drives, replace a lot of the electrical facilities because they're old and obsolete. Some of the motor, starter, and stop facilities were basically obsolete in 1975 when it was installed. So, and I spent a lot of time out on the internet looking for parts, and guess what? I'm still looking in some cases. We need to replace 8 pumps and 8 motors. And then we need to install some security devices. We're spread out over almost 600 square miles of watershed. And security matters are becoming more and more important. And we need the ability to be able to know something's going on right then. Calls us, calls the police, and I have this dream of it being like a Star Trek speaker saying, red alert, have a seat, the cops will be here in a minute. That's something like that's where I'd like to end up, but we'll see. So we're just asking for your support on this matter. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay, council, do you have any questions? And it says provide direction to staff.
So Mayor, this item was put on to provide direction to staff. If the council supports Dave and the Warricka Conservancy District pursuing this on behalf of the city of Lawton, and also just to receive an update on ARPA funds, which you received from Mark Yates, and the council's pleasure on, do we continue to walk along this road and garner support, pursue more dollars? Is the city willing to support that if we get those dollars? So that's what we're looking for, is a little bit of direction.
Okay, well, we can't take action except for provide direction to staff. So you're just looking for a straw poll here of do we support what's been presented? I don't know why we would turn it down. I mean, it's going to have to be done sooner or later. I don't see any objections.
If I may, a strong support from all of our cities is going to be very helpful. When Mark winds me up to go stand in front of the legislature, I'm going to say, yes, we as a region support this. That's really what we're after. Thank you.
I wrote the staff recommendation that receive a briefing, provide direction to staff, the Cornerstone Consulting Group, and Warricka Conservancy District concerning the community submitted project seeking state-controlled ARPA Rescue Plan Act funds. So what I was seeking was that consensus from the council that we continue to move forward with seeking funds from the state and that the community supports it.
Okay, so let's just have a motion for the staff to move forward with this.
I make a motion that the council direct staff to move forward with Warricka District.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much, Dave. Good to see you.
As always, thank you all so much.
Okay, that brings us back to number 19, right? I'm not getting out of track, am I? 19. Hold a public hearing and consider approving the submission and acceptance of the 2022 Department of Justice Edward Barney Assistance Grant Local JAG by the Lawton Police Department. Will.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is the 2022 Edward Burns Grant. It is issued by the Department of Justice, and it's given up to law enforcement agencies to help them purchase items and equipment that they typically wouldn't be able to buy normally because of budget constraints. So this year, they reached out to us, and they offered us $71,884. Now, in years past, it's the same. It's an 80-20 split with the county. So we end up with $57,507.20. And with that money, we'd like to buy three main items. What that is, the first thing is a ATV four-wheeler Polaris for the lake. Currently out the lake, we have four-wheel drive pickups, and there's just some areas out there that we can't get to. All right, if we can, it's very cumbersome. So this ATV would help those lake officers get to places that right now they can't really get to. The second thing is called a crash data retrieval system. And what that is, that's we'll call it an instrument that takes out information out of vehicles. Like we had a bad accident. Right now we're having to call the Oklahoma Highway Patrol to come and help us, and it pulls that information on those bad wrecks. By calling them, it lengthens them out of the investigation, and plus, we're not very self-sufficient. So this item will help us move more quickly on those type of accidents. And the third thing we'd like to get are just basically stop sticks, and those are all the little sheets of spikes that we put out when there's pursuits. That way you can deflate the tires of the person we're pursuing. And those three items would actually take up the entire fund. So with that, I'll move forward with y'all's permission, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions y'all might have.
Okay, we got to have a public hearing, but do you have questions for Will before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to come forward on this item and speak, please do so at this time. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council? Need a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 6-0. So that was a little slow, council. Now, don't fall asleep on me because we got a long meeting here. Item number 20, hold a public hearing and consider approval of an ordinance to change the zoning from the C4 Tourist Commercial District to the C5 General Commercial District zoning classification for property located at 7515 Northwest Cache Road, Lawton, Oklahoma 73505. Janet.
Good afternoon. I'd first like to introduce this by saying that the City Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this July 28th, and they did vote to approve with certain conditions. There were actually 3 conditions that were put in place with a binding site plan, specific use of property, and adding a tree buffer. And I have asked Cameron to be here today to go through the presentation that we normally make to CPC since there is a public hearing.
Thank you. Cameron?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. The request is for a rezoning to go from a C4 commercial, tourist commercial district to a C5 general commercial district located at 7515 Northwest Cache Road. It is west of 67th, north of Cache Road, east of 82nd. Currently, there's Tips Auto Spa. It is an existing C4 zoning. The proposed zoning is for C5. The proposed use is for the garage that is currently used as storage on the north side of the property to be a bed liner, spray and bed liner business. They will have to asphalt the parking space, and they are proposing a new wooden fence be installed on the north side of the parking lot. This was mailed to 41 property owners on August 1st and was posted in the Lawton Constitution on August 6th. There was one letter received before it went to CPC against this item, and it was included in your packet. And like Janet already mentioned, CPC did recommend to approve this with a vote of 5-1, subject to those conditions.
Council, before we hold the public hearing, do you have any questions for Cameron? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on this item, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council, do you have a motion?
Mayor, I have a question. And okay. Most of the property around here is typically C5 kind of stuff. This one property in particular has had automotive type things in there. It's right up against residential property, and the one that was there makes a ton of noise. And I've talked to the resident there a ton of times, and it's impossible to enforce the noise ordinance. So do we know what the hours are going to be for this bedliner company?
I do not know the particular hours. They are currently in business. It was Bullet Bedliner over by Texas Roadhouse. They are relocating. And so I believe it would be your typical business hours.
Is there any way we could limit them to normal business hours? It's really been a problem, and it's not Bullet that did it, but it was somebody else. And they'd be there at 3 o'clock in the morning banging on whatever they're banging on.
So I think you make your motion with the proposed limits. Is that right, John?
I'll make a motion to approve this with the CPC's recommendations, and also limit this business to quiet hours, let's say 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the CPC recommendation with quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Do we have a second?
Second.
We do have a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 6-0. Item number 21, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending sections 18.11106, 18.6.11611, 18.6.11612, 18.6.14.646, Lawton Municipal Code 2015, pertaining to planning and zoning, removing definitions, adding definitions, striking and adding uses permitted for microbrewery and microdistillery in the C4 Tourist Commercial District, adding uses permitted for microbrewery, and microdistillery in the I-1 Restricted Manufacturing and Warehouse District, providing for severability, providing for renumbering, and allowing floor amendments. Janet.
Yes, sir. Just one moment. On the last one. I'm sorry, we may have to go back to the last one that was just approved and read the ordinance on it. That's what we were just asking about. It is attached as an exhibit.
Okay, thank you. So we're going back to item number 2020. And we're going to...
The title?
Your motion included waiving the reading of the ordinance
waive
and
the
read the
reading of it,
title.
and read the title only.
Okay.
An ordinance changing the existing zoning classification from C4 Tourist Commercial District to C5 General Commercial District zoning classification on the tract of land which is hereinafter more particularly described in Section 1 hereof, authorizing changes to be made upon the official zoning map in accordance with this ordinance.
Thank you for that. Okay, is there a reason to vote again? Are we good? We're good. Okay, now we're going to item number 21. Janet.
Yes, sir. We're proposing a few changes to Chapter 18, and specifically permitting the microbrewery, microdistillery, and also macrobrewery. Right now, we do not allow those in our C4 Tourist Commercial District, nor the I-1 Restricted Manufacturing Warehouse District. Since we were having to go through this chapter anyway, we made some updates to it. If you go through, you'll see, where we have stricken language, where we have updated language. We've also added some language, for instance, on number 9, the bed and breakfast establishment, we added short-term rental because of our Airbnbs that we are now bringing in. We've stricken language having to do with carnivals, circuses, commercial amusements, and those type things that really don't take place in those areas any longer. As you continue to move through and see your definitions, we've updated definitions for gasoline service. That's number 33 for filling station. And we've updated the language to reflect what we see more now whenever you go into a filling station. Also kennels, we have updated that language to reflect what we have currently in our municipal code for animal shelter. Then we have included the macrobrewery, meaning an establishment where beer or malt beverages are made on premises at an annual production rate of over 15,000 barrels. And a macrobrewery may include tasting rooms. If you go to the next page, 57, microbrewery means an establishment in which beer or malt beverages are made on premises, then sold or distributed, and which produces less than 15,000 barrels of beer and malt beverages per calendar year. So we've added that language in to allow, and also a micro distillery, and we are being asked to update the language to allow businesses that have not been allowed to come in. As you know, whenever you travel throughout the state, now we see lots of the micro distilleries and microbreweries, and we would like to offer that the council consider this language to keep up with that. As you continue to go through, again, just updating languages and then uses permitted all the way through to the very end. And again, since we were going through this chapter, that's why you see so many descriptions that were stricken and then new language added in so that we could keep up, with the changing times.
Council, do you have questions? So my one regret on this is that it was on an item where we had such a big agenda, and there wasn't time for me to go through this. I did notice on here a few things that caused me concern.
Okay.
And when we talk about commercial amusement enterprises that you're scratching out, what would that be?
Well, I think you guys could probably tell me more about the history. We had quite a colorful conversation with legal and with also our planning staff about things in the past that had been allowed in other areas in the city, and they didn't necessarily go into these areas. Cameron, do you have anything you want to add to that? It's not that we're not allowing them, it's just that we're striking them from these areas, that there are other areas that they are allowed. But,
as far as the carnivals?
Yeah.
So the ones you're talking about is the carnival and things like that. We cover those in different chapters of our code already, and we didn't want to contradict them in our chapter.
So C4 is probably our smallest segment of commercial, right?
I don't know.
As far as most restrictive?
No, I don't mean restrictive. I mean how much C4 we have in the city.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Well, what was the reasoning behind striking Indian goods stores? I'm just trying to figure out why we're limiting Indian goods stores.
We don't have anything that's called that anymore. A lot of these are just the language, we don't have anything that characterizes those any longer. For instance, we actually struck through something called chattel, and if you look up the definition of that, that's property including servants and human beings. And so we updated that type language in there because we didn't feel that was appropriate any longer. And, so those were the rationale that we used. Was a lot of the language is outdated, and we just don't, we've classified things in other areas now, and we didn't need to classify them in this chapter because they are in other chapters, and the definitions just needed to be improved.
Council?
I really like this. This is a lot of hard work, and this is the kind of work that employees don't like doing. But sometimes our codes are our worst enemy, and they prevent us from getting things done.
I'm glad you see it that way. Are you making a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance, waive the reading of the ordinance, and read the title only.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Let's read the ordinance.
An ordinance pertaining to planning and zoning, amending sections 18.1.1.106, 18.6.11, 611, 18.6.11, 612, and 18.6.14, 646, Chapter 18, Lawton City Code 2015, removing definitions, adding definitions, striking and adding uses permitted for microbrewery and microdistillery in the C4 Tourist Commercial District, adding uses permitted for macro brewery, microbrewery, and micro distillery in the I-1 restricted manufacturing and warehouse district, providing for severability, providing for renumbering, and allowing for floor amendments.
Okay, now I'm going to open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to come forward and speak on this item, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Hold on just a minute. Please vote. Motion carries 6-0. Item number 22, receive an update on the new Latch Transfer Station project, including current status, site selection criteria, sidewalk plan, and other information as necessary to inform the council on the project, discuss the project and timeline for completion, and take any action deemed necessary to allocate and approve funding expenditure. Janet.
Yes, sir. This actually was an item begun by legal department at the request of Councilman Fortenbaugh, I believe. And so we are, obviously the planning department is very involved with LATs. So I put together a memorandum for you and to advise you that we did hold a meeting on March 15th between the planning department, LATs management, and also a subcommittee of the City Transit Trust. And it was to present updated information on a new proposal for a site for the transfer center. And I did include that memorandum for you and quite a few attachments, but I would like you to look at the PowerPoint that we have on the screen for you. And Cameron, I'm going to ask you to go through that. You have the magic. Okay, all right. So, as you know, there have been quite a few locations that have been proposed over the years, and some of you have been here long enough to go through every one of those. And for me, I just assembled the report, and now I get to present it to all of you. So we actually have proposed, the planning department working with LATs, we are proposing, go ahead, Cameron, that we look at a location on Railroad that is in between A and B Avenue, that is across from our public safety center. One of the reasons for this is that we do already own some property in that area. Actually, if you go down to D Avenue, we actually own more property there. What you'll see is in the site overview are the two locations that you see in red. Both of those areas are proposed areas. Now, we have not decided on anything definitive about how they will look or anything like that. That is still yet, for the council to decide. But we did want you to at least get a visual of where we're proposing the transfer center. Now, that's what Ryan calls it, the transfer center. And whenever I asked him what that was, that's actually the bus terminal in language that you and I would use. So I said, okay, and talking with our staff, we would like a grand concept of this. So what we would like to see is, Cameron, you can go to the next one, is more of a Grand Central Station type idea, especially since it'll be located right across from our public safety center. We feel that it will help us to increase our ridership because we'll be in such close proximity to the public safety center if the council does approve for us to move forward with this location. And these are just potential layouts for the design. Now, what we have factored in are how many buses that we have. We're actually in the midst of a zero emissions bus study where we're looking at the number of buses that we have, the number of shuttles that we have, and the potential that we would go to a duality of fuel systems that we currently have diesel. And we would be moving potentially to supplement that with electric. We've not finished that study yet. But this area here, you'll see some public facilities areas, and those are just potentials for what we would like to see in that place. And on the ends where you've got A Avenue and B Avenue, what we would like to see are retail opportunities that could help us also support the ridership for LATs. So eventually, whenever we bring this back to you, we will be incorporating some of that in, because we would like for even people that are not going to be riding the bus system to come and take advantage of a coffee shop or a sandwich shop or something of that nature. Cameron, if you'll go to the next one. This is what we're proposing at the D Avenue area off of Railroad, and obviously it backs up against Lawrence Street, and so that would be what we could propose as our maintenance facility. And so we're bringing this to you today just so that you can see the update of work that, what we have done so far. Obviously, we will need to look at the land acquisition. Cameron, if you'll go forward. What we've attempted to put together here for you, currently, this is the area on Railroad between A and B. The yellow boxes there are what Lura already owns. The black lines that you see there are that facility on the left, kind of transposed onto this property here on the right. So we would, and Richard did work on this with us. Richard, are you here? Has he already gone? Okay, so Richard did work with us on this as well. And so, with land acquisition and things of that nature, hopefully he's passed some of that acuity on to me, and perhaps I can manage to do some good things here as well. But if you go to the D Avenue area, you'll see that we own all of that, save just that tiny spot on the south of this map. So this is the potential that we do have. Now, one of the reasons that we're needing to talk to you about this also is because we have the ability to apply for some grants. Obviously, you're hearing that a lot right now. There's a lot of federal funding that is available to us, but in order for us to apply for that, we have to have a concept, we have to have some designs, we have to have some things in place. Some of what we have here is property that the city already owns that we can put in as in-kind and things of that nature. Now, as we move forward in this presentation, what I'd like you to see is obviously our Public Safety Center, which is one of the jewels of our city. It's one of the newest buildings that we have. And we certainly appreciate the aesthetics of this. And so what we would like to do is to begin working on something that would be complementary to this facility and would take advantage of the beautiful facade that is already here and work towards that. Now, Ryan is here, Tony is here, also Jonathan is here, so this has certainly not been something that I've taken on single-handedly. We've had a lot of hands and a lot of good ideas on this. Cameron, if you'll go to the next slide. What we have right here is one of the buildings that I believe Ryan, the company that Ryan works with, that they've actually helped to facilitate in Waco. We really liked that design, so we wanted you to see that that would be something, obviously, that we could look at going forward on this. And then ultimately, that next slide. But then we're going to end here with a picture that is upstairs, the Frisco passenger station from Lawton, Oklahoma. And that is a nod to our past. And of course, we don't want to forget our past as we move into the future. We want to appreciate our history. So we've included that here as well for you. And just to bring you up to date on what we have been working on, we anticipate that probably in the next 2 weeks or so, we'll have quite a few items that we need to bring to your attention for the City Transit Trust. We stopped a contract that we had with Guernsey that was initiated in 2017. They finished a preliminary design, and then the council was unable to come to a consensus on the next property where they would need to design and ultimately where our Grand Central Station concept would be. So we're at a place that we will need to bring that back to you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, and we do have, is that all of your presentation?
Yes,
Before
sir.
questions? Okay, and before questions, we're going to go to citizens. David Tyler signed up first. David, if you'll come up. Phil, if you'll make your way this way, you'll be next. Hi, David. We need your name and address.
David Tyler, 501 Southwest 77th. I'm not angry. I just want to start off, okay? I'm not angry. Only time I ever come before the city council, it's not for me. It's for people who can't speak up for themselves. And when the public safety building was built and they said, we're going to put a transfer station at the old police station, I said, fantastic. I'm all for that. I rode the bus a lot for 12 years. I'd get off work at Goodyear, I'd catch it right in front of my house on Lincoln, and I'd ride it up to 11th and Ferris, get off and go work on Lawton High softball field, and then I'd catch the bus. When my grandson got old enough, I wanted him to have the experience of riding the bus like I did when I was a little kid, and we'd ride it up to the old city hall and get off and go to the library, and then we'd go to Burgess's Grill or we'd go to the mall, and I wanted him to have that experience. And when y'all were going to build it at the old police station, that was great. I thought it was perfect, right where it needed to be. That one building from Waco would look great there. But you know what? One thing I don't hear from anybody is you're lengthening the distance people have to travel to go to the library, to go to the courthouse, to go to Burgess's Grill, to go to the mall. And the people I would see on the bus when I'd ride would be mothers with little kids going to the library, elderly that were going to the courthouse, handicapped people, disabled people that were going to the mall. You're extending that. I'm thinking about safety. You can change designs to meet the needs at Shepler Plaza and the farmers market, because apparently diesel is not an option now because we're going to transition to electric or CNG. But it's going to be unsafe for people leaving a transfer station at Railroad and going to where they need to go to downtown Lawton. And I hope you take that into consideration, because in my opinion, where the old police station is, that's the perfect location. Safety. For 35 years at Goodyear, I was a safety rep. I did systematic problem-solving groups out there. And you look at the safety of the citizens of Lawton, and with no due respect, none of y'all are going to ride the bus down there and have to walk to the mall or to the courthouse. I don't think 2/3 of the people up here. Safety. The old police station is where it should be put. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Phil? Name and address, please.
Phil Kennedy. My residence is 3713 Northeast Eastlake. Actually, here on behalf of my business, Comanche Home Center, we're located at number 2 Southwest C Avenue, and also have properties there at 230 South Railroad. So we are right next to the planned transit center location. A couple of challenges we've had, and I'll just go back to the Safety Center, which we're extremely proud to be neighbors of, and what a beautiful facility we have in our community. But we have worked some logistic challenges over the past couple of years, bringing in our vendor trucks. And we've come to a pretty good arrangement, I think, with the city and the safety center that has worked over time. In this illustration that we've received today, that you've received today, B Street would be closed between Railroad and First. Now, to actually do what we need to do to work logistics, our trucks generally actually come in off of First Street and head east up B Avenue. And so that puts them at the end of our yard, and that's where we unload them and try to get out of the way. So if we cut off B, that will make it extremely hard for us to come in. Now, if we go back and we go off of Lawrence, our trucks are heading in the wrong direction, and we've had several challenges with that. So we're trying to head the trucks east for everybody's safety. Another matter that I would bring up is, Railroad is a heavily trafficked, actually by trucks. And so we have several vendor trucks that go on Railroad. We have our delivery trucks that go on Railroad. We have several other construction trucks that go on Railroad. In the illustration that I see, it looks like the buses would actually be turning into a bay right off of Railroad, and so I think they would have much interaction with those construction trucks. So I would just ask that you consider those 2 points before you take any action on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And those are the only 2 citizens that signed up to speak on this. Tim, did you still want to speak, or?
Tim Hushback representing PSO at 226 East B. B actually dead ends into our yard. So I just echo like Phil, it tends to restrict traffic through there. Not so much our big trucks, but our engineers and such will use B pretty extensively. And so closing off B would become a hardship for us also. And that's all I'd like to say.
All right, thank you. Now I'll open it up to council for questions to staff. Council?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Janet, there will be a time for an actual public hearing on all this also, isn't there? This is really just an update?
Yes, sir. There will be. This is not the public hearing. There will be quite a few, I think at least 2, through the whole process. And this information is very helpful for us as we're putting together a presentation for council. So I'm happy that the residents are letting us know the potential issues that we need to consider before we bring something back to council.
You don't have an approximate date when the next public hearing will be, by any chance?
We're actually going to try to work on that pretty quickly. Was it September, the end of no, that was our transit. I'm sorry, we're working on a couple of things right now. We are going to, do you want to speak to that? Oh. We need to get something approved through the City Transit Trust for Guernsey to actually start putting together some architectural and engineering things. So we will have to come back to you in order to get all of this approved. And again, these are just perspectives, for what we anticipate that we would like to recommend to you. These can change based on what we're hearing from the public. And we did actually meet with PSO last week. We were unaware of their issues that they brought today, but we will certainly keep those in mind as we come back to the council. And we are going to try to move on this probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so the time frame, after the 4 to 6 weeks is when we'll have the first public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had another question. The maintenance yard and the transit building, they have to be in the same spot, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. For operational purposes, you want to have where your employees actually park, pick the buses up in the same location where they can do all their administrative work.
And you're going to be doing I was thinking that the maintenance on the actual buses will take place in that maintenance area too. Do I have that incorrect?
So with the two sites, it just wasn't feasible to have everything all in one particular location. Now, depending on what may happen over the next couple of weeks, that might be another option that could surface. But as of right now, with the property that we identified, it needed to be split up in order for your maintenance, administration, and bus parking, fueling, bus washing in one separate location, and then your transfer center intermodal system, if you will.
All right. I appreciate that information.
Ryan, are you going to give up the facility on Bishop Road, or are you going to still have need for that?
As of with Bishop Road, as of right now, if we have all three of these properties, then yes, yeah, the lease would be broken out with that. But there's no timetable of when funds would become available to start building and everything like that. So.
I could probably, okay, thank you. I could probably echo some of the things that David said a little while ago. I'm looking at the overall picture. We want people to come downtown. We want them to go to Central Plaza. We want them to go to the town center. And then we've got this park thing going on with Shepler Park and the Farmers Market. And then we were talking about building something down I think it was 4th Street. And then accessibility, having sidewalks to get anywhere that you need to go, including City Hall, the courthouse, all of those kind of places. So I'm worried about that on a safety standpoint, and then being able to work and not create a burden down there in that area with all the businesses that are on Railroad.
So the question I've got for you, Ryan, is what are your time constraints concerning starting and completion concerning the grant?
I guess, yeah, speak to that. So basically, we have a 2016 grant with just under about $600,000 that we've had available, and we were going to use on the design engineering from the previous site, which was at the old police station building. When that had not come to full surface, we had to go back to the drawing board, and I think that's when we started the committees, and we really started to kind of come up with some other places of where we can go, and then COVID hit. So we had to kind of put some of these ideas on the back burner for a little bit, but the problem is that these funds are, there's no exact timetable of when they're going to expire, but FTA at any point in time can say, look, you have X amount of time to be able to use these funds, and if we're talking just under $600,000, it's a lot of money to be used for, you know, a good project like this. So.
Okay, are we taking any action on this? Okay.
No, we were not asking for any, this was just our report to make sure that council was aware of everything that we're working on. We will bring an action item back to you.
Okay, and you do understand there's at least some concern about the locations you
Yes,
saw?
sir.
Okay, very
Yes.
good. No action, so we'll move on to item number 23. Consideration and discussion with possible action concerning potential de-annexation of the area located at Bishop Road and 67th Street, with staff providing related information to consider the plan proposed by Public Utilities Department to extend 12-inch and 8-inch public water main line to be funded from the 2019 Water and Sewer CIP, and accept the fire marshal's plan to service the area in the interim time period to include any floor amendments made. Janet?
Yes, sir.
You're here a lot today.
Again, yes, sir. I would like to say that public notice was sent to the residents in this area of potential de-annexation, and Rusty has worked on some things since the public meeting that we had, and I did provide a memo for council. And I know that all of our residents are very interested to hear what Rusty has to say, so I'm going to hand it off to Rusty.
Okay, thank you.
In your packet, there's a, can you put up the maps? Okay, you can't. In your packet, we have a couple of maps in here, but what we had by the public meeting, we knew that we had not presented council with a good alternative, and basically the only alternative you had was not a good alternative. So we kept looking and kept looking. The fire marshal looked, and public utilities looked. We had done quite a bit of design work on what it was going to take to be able to not have to de-annex the property out there. What the fire marshal has found, and in your attachments, there's the first drawing sheet there. It shows areas that can meet under the NFPA 13 can provide 1,000 gallon per minute off the 6-inch line within 400 feet of the 6-inch line. There's a border around that connects down Bishop Road and down to just past the half-mile line, and it's 400 foot to the west of 67th Street. That area right there, if the homes are less than 3,600 square feet and a fire hydrant is installed, can have fire protection and a building permit can be issued today. The area, and those are in beige in your drawing. The area in orangish color there, those areas off the 4-inch lines with a 500 gallon a minute and less than 3,600 square feet with a fire hydrant installed, they have to install a fire suppression system in those homes that they're building. And the cost of a residential fire suppression system is something like $2,500 cost for a fire suppression system. They could obtain a building permit today. It covers all the properties that are, except one property right in the middle, that could, if the homes are less than 3,600 square feet and the ones that are off of the 4-inch line, they put a fire suppression system in, could obtain a building permit today and proceed on with construction of a home. But it is limited to 3,600 square feet and down. We did look to see how far the 4-inch line ran. We went out and potholed and located. The 4-inch line extends to the south side of Combs Road. So that same fire flow of 500 gallon a minute can be obtained all the way to the south side of Combs Road within 400 foot of 67th Street. So that is what the fire marshal has come up with, a way of at least, if they're building within that area, be able to have fire flow and issue building permits today. We continue through on page 2 is a design and fine-tuning a design of installation of a 12-inch. And what I'd initially come up with is if we did a cost share with the property owners and extend a 12-inch down 67th Street to the half-mile line and a little bit of 12-inch on Bishop, and an 8-inch line in there, that removes the restriction. That gives you 1,500 gallon per minute fire flow. That removes the restriction of the suppression system and its adequate fire flow. This is fire protection for the existing homes out there. This provides fire protection for the existing homes and is expandable on south. The material cost, we put the material cost together to build this, material cost is approximately $400,000. The labor cost for installation of the 12-inch and 8-inch line is approximately $450,000. That's $850,000 is approximate total cost. Since originally when we had provided the information, we were looking at contract engineering, but we've completed about 80% of the engineering design for this already. So there's no need of going outside to complete the engineering for this project. So what we have brought to council for them to consider is, in the interim time, is using the fire marshal's recommendation to allow, if they want to build today, and they're less than 3,600 square feet, and they can be within that build within that 400 foot or extend a main to that 400 foot, they could obtain their building permits today. And the second part of it is from that point, authorize us to proceed with design and funding for extending this water main to service the entire area at the approximate cost of $850,000 out of the 2019 Water and Sewer CIP.
Okay, I've got a question. You mentioned partnering with an improvement district.
Okay, there is an option here. This is another option. I missed that. Is if we furnish the material at $450,000, they furnish through an improvement district. An improvement district is the money is borrowed by the city and paid for out of and use the ad valorem tax assessment against the properties to pay their portion of it, which would amount to about a $2,000 a year increment for 15 years on their property taxes. And it would require 50 plus 1% of those property owners to agree to that improvement district. But that's a way of funding half of it. If it was to fund all of it, it would be $4,000 a year on their property, which becomes extensive. But a $2,000 a year would be an improvement district that could cover these property owners and get this line, and them basically partnering and paying for the installation cost and us, the city furnishing the material cost.
Council, do you have questions?
Yeah, Rusty, that improvement district, you're talking about the second page.
Yes, if an improvement district is used, you would fund through that improvement district the installation cost, the labor cost, which is $400,000 to $450,000. And what that would be is money would be borrowed against the ad valorem income that would be assessed to those property owners over a 15-year. And the maximum time you can do an improvement district is 15 years.
And that's the two 12-inch lines on Bishop section?
That's the 12-inch line, the two 12-inch, and then the 8-inch line.
And 8-inch, okay, thank you.
And that right there provides 1,500 gallon a minute, no restrictions on suppression systems. It covers the existing properties and any potential new properties that are within it.
Council?
So what would be our next steps on this, since we have a couple of options?
What our recommendation came forward as is to take the fire marshal's recommendation as an interim and then authorize us to do a design and contracting and build the 12-inch and the 8-inch water line and fund the entire project out of the 2019 CIP water and sewer.
You're saying an option is the partnership deal?
Yes.
Okay, does that make sense?
But as we're saying, $2,000 per property owner, that's a pretty good hit.
Mm-hmm. Spread over 15 years?
Yes, that's $2,000 a year for 15 years. That's a pretty good hit.
Do we have any action on this item? Mr. Warren.
This is a tough one, Council, because currently we represent these individuals as well as the rest of the citizens of Lawton. And I go back to something I said earlier, had this been developed the way we normally require developments to be done, the developer would have put in that infrastructure. And then that would have been passed on to anyone that purchased the properties. And that way, It keeps everybody in Lawton from paying for somebody else's infrastructure to be installed. For whatever reason, that's not the way we did things. We have to alleviate it somehow. We have changed some things. Mr. Hampton chairs a committee. We've changed some things and are going to change some more things as far as code and the things that we require that will keep this from happening in the future. You won't be able to come and get a water line from the city of Lawton just to serve your house. I don't care where you live. That's just not going to happen because it leads to situations like this. That being said, I prefer the shared method, but that's a big hit. So I'm going to make a motion to move forward, have staff do the design, implement the stopgap with the fire marshal, and direct staff to do the plans and bring back whatever we need to bring back to council to provide funding out of the 2019 CIP.
Yeah, I'll second that. I do want to make a comment, though.
Well, before comments, is your comment related to a second? Because when we get a motion, we're supposed to see if there's a second unless your questions are about the motion.
I seconded it already. Let me get back on track here. Initially, we're part of what we're trying to do here is be able to permit, right? Is that correct in this area?
There were a number of properties wishing to obtain building permits, and that could not occur until we found one exemption, but they're very strict exemptions, and they have to put a suppression system in, which is a one-time cost of a couple $1,000s, and they have to install a fire hydrant out there. But it still doesn't provide the level of fire protection we like to have, but it does meet the minimum fire protection necessary.
And that's the person that's developing needs to put those things in.
If a property owner wants to build a house, he has to put a suppression system in his house. His house cannot be larger than 3,600 square feet, and he has to put a fire hydrant within 400 foot of that house.
Well, I think that I kind of echo Councilman Warren a little bit in some of what I'm hearing from him. I mean, what I would like is for us to take care of this, and then we don't have to deal with it anymore. And what are the chances of that happening, in your opinion?
That's what we're proposing. That will resolve the issue.
Okay, so we would cover, the city would cover all the fire protection necessary.
If we install the main and the extension and fund that provides them 1,500 gallon per minute fire protection. They don't have to do any of the special provisions in their houses. We install the fire hydrants where they need to be. And
so when they go get their permits and everything, all this water and fire stuff that we've had to deal with here will be fixed. I like that we won't have to do anything else in here, and I think that probably covers all the stuff that was mentioned, Janet.
Let me give you one example.
Sure.
If, some of these tracts of property are big, they have to get within 400 feet of that fire protection. So that means they may have to extend a fire hydrant through their property. If they build on the very back side of their property, they're a quarter of a mile away. Right. They'll have to extend on their property, their own private, if they want to build to the very back of their property.
Okay, so there are some circumstances where there'll be some issues that they'll need to, that'll need to be worked through.
All the properties would have fire protection abutting their property.
Okay, all right, that's all the questions that I have, Mayor.
Rusty, I had
Mr. Warren.
one question about flushing the lines.
The flushing of the lines with the 12-inch and with the demand out there, we would be flushing approximately every once a week to every 2 weeks. We put an automatic flusher on there, and the amount of water is just minimal compared. It amounts to, if we were retail selling it, would amount to one residential house of flushing.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Fortenbaugh.
I think you were going to make the same, well, for some reason, the city annexed this land 40 years ago, and we didn't change anything in 40 years, and I feel like overall we have an obligation to all the people that live out there, and not to.
That's why.
It's
this
easy to say
proposal-
de-annex them, and I hope we can continue to find some constructive way to find a way to solve this problem without spending $1 million.
We knew the answers that we'd given you weren't palatable for you or the citizens, and we kept searching.
Yeah, along with that, it is understood that there were none of us here at the time that this took place, and we're trying to accommodate everybody's.
Mr. Warren might have been here.
Yeah, Mr. Warren. I'm not going to touch that, and he might have. I don't know.
Hair then too.
Okay, he had hair then too. I do agree that this is an issue that's difficult for all of us, but we do all live in a community, and it is no doubt that the de-annexation, I think, that was brought up in that discussion was probably more for us to get where we're at now, because options have to be given and looked at for everybody to talk about what their needs are. And everybody has different needs. Everybody does. But I appreciate you guys putting the time in your department to try to figure out the options that are needed that will probably help and accommodate everybody. And
This was 3 departments: fire department, fire marshal, planning, and public utilities.
yes,
so there was a lot of people involved.
and a lot of work. And I do want to let the citizens know that we stop everything that we're doing to try to accommodate these things. And there's a lot of man hours and money that was even involved in us trying to make sure that we accommodate our citizens' needs, which I think is very, very important to do. And in that, I do appreciate all those departments and all the man hours that were put in there. And as I said, I think the issue came up with permitting, and then it came, part of that was the fire suppression. Am I correct? And we're spending Rusty, we're spending $800,000 out of the 2019 CIP to accommodate fixing this at the city's cost, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Warren.
I just had one other comment, just for those that didn't know, and the fire chief's here, or Mr. Burke. There's a lot of communities that require fire suppression in homes anyway. So that's not something that's unheard of. And it's not that great of an expense, and it actually provides a good service.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the departments that came together to come up with these solutions, because I was not for the de-annexation. And so I think this is a win-win, and we do have the responsibility of taking care of this, and hopefully this will set a precedent so it doesn't happen again.
City Manager.
Mayor, first I want to praise staff. They did a great job in finding a solution, and like we say in our principles of excellence, a way to yes, morally, ethically, safely, and legally, and I think they've done that. It is at a cost, but we did find a way, I think, to solve a problem that we were all looking for. And the second thing is, I have a question of Rusty and Janet in this regard. If they build a property and the fire hydrant, the extension has to be extended towards your home, say they don't build it within 400 feet, then we would need some sort of easement, because then we would be maintaining the hydrant. If we do not, then they would be maintaining the hydrant.
That's correct. If it extends onto their property, and normally if it's just serving their one property, it would remain a private facility.
Once we pass this, can they get a building permit in anticipation?
Currently under that interim, if they're within 400 foot.
Okay, so they can't get an open building
They can't get a
permit
6,000
until we get it put in.
They have to stay at 3,600 square foot, and they have to be within 400 foot of the current main until we get this line built.
Till the line is installed.
Yes, and that's going to take approximately a year from design to completion.
They can get a permit with the conditions that council, if they adopt this, will put in place. They could start tomorrow based upon those conditions that you've outlined in this conversation.
And then if they or if they build something different than that, now, once we've got this under construction, then it would become a condition before a certificate of occupancy could be issued that this construction was complete on this line.
But
This line won't
construction
take
has
long.
to begin.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say since it's a year, they could actually complete a home in a lot less time than that. That right there, but we want to be at least to the point that construction starts. That way they would not complete the home before the infrastructure was completed.
Okay, I'd write down 1 year, but I'm pretty sure they're going to remember that.
Mayor?
Are we ready to,
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I looked over at the guy sitting next to me, and I know legal had a big part in dealing with a lot of this stuff too, so I want to praise them and thank them for all their help.
Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. And we're going to take a 5-minute break.
this is the max, and when you upgrade, this is the max. And there's only So that's the other legal part, right? So how did this become such an issue when there was 24 issues and only 14 is in use? We still have 10 available.
All right, please make your way back to the dais. Council, please make your way back to the dais. Okay, we're ready to get started. Consider receiving an update from staff concerning the research on potential sale of approximately 92.5 acres of land located on the west side of Lake Ellsworth, to include the property's evaluation and inclusion in the lake's master plan, and direct staff on further action as necessary. Dwayne.
Mayor and Council, back in July, Council directed staff to expend some time researching the potential sale of some property that was adjacent to Lake Ellsworth, specifically a portion approximately 92.5 acres. At this point in time, we can report that, what we understand is this particular piece of property.
Hold on just a minute.
Sure.
Can we get, I wonder if we could get the citizens in back to please take the conversation into the foyer. Thank you. Okay, I think you can continue now. You might need to start over.
So as I was saying, Mayor and Council, back in July of 2021, Council directed staff to put some time in researching the possible sale of a piece of property located at Lake Ellsworth. In particular, the property is approximately 92 and a half acres. This direction was based on a citizen that was looking for or looking at the possibility of trying to purchase the property. We can report to you at this point that this particular piece of property actually contains a portion of Chandler Creek, which is actually the third largest tributary to Lake Ellsworth and a major component to our city's drinking water supply. We also found that we had a previous citizen actually make the same request back in 2002. And this request was presented to the Lakes and Lands Commission and eventually recommended for denial for the sale, citing federal and state guidelines with regard to the 660-foot high water mark. Basically, it was held by the city that access needed to be maintained by the city to strictly control the water and protect the water source. More recently, regarding this piece of property, as you well know, council directed that we complete a master plan of our lakes, which involves both Lake Ellsworth and Lake Latonka. And as we go through that process, this piece of property has also been identified as a potential recreational area. And so at this point, from the staff standpoint, we would request that council not take an action on this particular piece of property until we've completed that master plan and can identify exactly what options the council actually has.
When do you expect that?
That should be done this fall. It's our understanding we should have it October, November timeframe.
Council, questions?
I just wanted to point out to legal, we had a situation several years ago where somebody wanted to set up on the tributary going into Lake Latonka, and they were going to capture the water and, I don't know, bottle it and sell it or something. Ended up in a lawsuit because they couldn't use the land for that purpose. So we got to be very careful we're not violating any state or federal laws by selling this.
Well, Councilman Fortenbaugh, I would just add that Dwayne was just referring to the 660 feet from the high water mark. That's actually based statutorily. That can be found in Title 11, Section 37-104, which talks about the municipality's authority in preserving and maintaining source water for its community. So we're aware of these restrictions and limitations, and we'll make sure that council is advised accordingly.
If council desires, Rusty is here, and under the key issues on this particular agenda item, we've listed some of the basically restrictions and things that for consideration should council want to take any kind of action on it.
Okay, so Mr. Warren, sorry.
I was just going to comment. I started this deal a year ago, and those restrictions are the same restrictions that the city's held to, and there's no reason, as legal said, that we can't pass those on to whoever purchased that property or whoever leased that property, and they would have to follow those in the same vein that we would. And the reason that I thought this was a good idea, and I thought we ought to really explore it seriously, is that basically when you look at those restrictions, and I didn't bring it with me to read it, but when you read that statute, it basically says you can't do anything there. Thank you. It says the property and land so acquired before and after the passage of this subarticle, insofar as the lands are within 660 feet of the margin of the reservoir at maximum high water. That's another thing to consider when you go out there and look at this property. This property's got about a 2-foot creek running through it right now. The high water mark is probably 15 foot or 20 foot higher than that. I've seen it, I think it was before the new bridge, but I've seen it crest over that highway before in the past. But basically, within that 660 feet, which encompasses pretty much everything north of the creek and would leave a little bit south of the creek. It's necessary for natural drainage into the reservoir, shall not be used by the municipality, its lessees, or assigns, or other persons or corporations for any purpose other than the protection of the reservoir and the waters thereof from contamination and pollution. Meaning, basically, you can't do anything with it other than you could bale natural grass, but you couldn't fertilize the grass. You couldn't, you actually, I guess maybe you could get away with planting grass there, but you couldn't fertilize it. All you could do would be to bale it. But that's the same restrictions that the city's got. You can't run cattle on it. You can't do anything. And so my thinking was, if we've got a piece of property here that we can't do anything with, we have leased it in the past, and it wasn't treated properly during that lease period. But if we have a piece of property here that we basically can't use, we can't do anything with it, we can't, anybody that we would lease it to can't do anything with it other than bale it. And it just sits there empty. If we can cause the same set of rules to apply to a person that bids the highest bid and purchases it, basically we're putting money in the bank for the citizens and receiving the same thing that we would have by just letting that land sit empty. And so that's the reason that I started this in the beginning. We've jumped through all kinds of different hoops back and forth trying to decide if we can do it, if we can't do it. Found out what was being done and which wasn't what was supposed to be been done. And so basically that's the idea. I don't at this point, we don't have a real honest idea of how much money we could sell it for. I wouldn't even want to throw that out there till it's appraised and everything. But I think, that would be my point at my idea at this point. I would want to make a motion that we have staff move forward and get appraisals so we at least know how much we're talking about and whether it's worth it or not.
Okay, so your motion is to have staff move forward and get appraisals.
Move forward towards the sale and get appraisals.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Discussion or debate. City Attorney wants to say something.
Deputy City Manager Burke, I believe we're already going forward with the appraisals. Is that correct? That we've already made some inquiries regarding those?
We pulled a couple of comps. Actually, we had out of Stillwater, if you look at the agriculture value, it was a little over $2,500 an acre. We pulled some comps that would be similar to this piece of property, and those comps range anywhere from $10,000 to a little over $35,000 per acre. So depending on what value is attached to the property, it's obviously going to be tied to what the property can be used for. So having an appraiser come in and look at it is going to depend upon how he's looking at the property. If he's looking at it from an agricultural standpoint, you're probably going to be in that $2,000 to $5,000 range. If you're looking at it from a recreational standpoint, which is my understanding, we can use it for that particular part. I'm familiar with the statutory requirement on the buildings and the structures, and we're researching that at this point. But we are being told that we can use it for recreational purposes. So that could mean primitive camping or RV park, some things like that. But we'll flush that out. That was part of the reason we were requesting allow the master plan to move forward. But we can go ahead and pursue the appraisal in accordance with Commissioner Warren's motion.
And Mayor, I'd just add that myself, DCM Burke, the gentleman from Hoff and Associates, his name was Nate Clare, is that right?
Correct.
City Manager Cleghorn, we all met and we discussed this, and Hoff and Associates thinks that we can put up those rudimentary recreational activities, maybe some paddle boats, some other I don't remember everything he said, but this was a meeting, we discussed those types of activities that might potentially be included in that area and included in the Lake Master Plan. And then I just, one final comment here, just going back to Councilman Warren's comment about some of the things that were happening on this particular track, E10, but I think a good news story is that this inquiry made us look at all of our lake leases and make sure that all of them are doing what they need to be doing on their land. So I think that was a positive result.
Mr. Hampton.
Thank you, Mayor. I have had a constituent, I don't know how many times he's been bugging me about it, but he says that there are some RV pads that are already out there in that area that the grass has grown over. And he's been wanting me to go out there and drive and see. So as you guys are looking at that parks thing, can you see if those pads are in there out there? So he said there was an RV park when he was a councilman. And if you would do that for me, I think I could pass that information on to him. You said that study with Half and Associates, to complete that study, is going to be in September, did you say, or when?
October, November.
October, November. Okay, and we're into contract with them, and have we paid them and everything for that? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Warren.
Would it be advantageous for future use even, I guess, to include in that motion to have staff request an AG's opinion as to what that statute actually means? I mean, if that's, I don't know who the final word is on what that means.
Do you mean, Councilman Warren, request an AG opinion as to whether or not we can legally sell the property? Is that what you?
No, as to what that statute means when it says nothing other than protection of the waters.
We can. We would have to go through one of our representatives because we can't directly request that, but we certainly could.
I think it might be a good idea for future use.
So I heard you mention the motion. Are you wanting to add that to your motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Who seconded that? Are you good with the second? Okay. All right. So, and you would ask me that. The motion was to move forward with an appraisal and also on this property, and also check with the AG, get an attorney's opinion from the AG or an AG opinion on what uses can be for that property. Did I say that okay?
That was very close.
All right, thank you. You're good with that, right, for the second, Ms. Hankins? Okay. Any further discussion or debate?
Was the study involved in that? The half?
What we're doing is voting for the staff to go ahead and get an appraisal. We haven't voted to sell anything. So that appraisal probably won't be back till about the time the other comes back anyway. It's a pretty specialized appraisal.
We're going to continue the Half and Associates study on the park.
The lake study.
Yeah, lake study.
Yeah.
It's currently part of the process right now.
Yeah, good question. Good question. Thank you. We good? Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. That brings us up to item number 25. Receive a presentation on the City of Lawton's bridge inventory status from H.W. Lochner Incorporated. Did I say that right, Lochner?
Lochner, yes,
okay.
sir. You did. Mayor
Joe
and Council.
Painter.
So Lochner is the firm we just agreed the contract to do the construction plans for our bridges. They also do our biannual inventory of our bridges and inspections. And I asked Troy to give you all a brief update on the condition of all the rest of our bridges in the city, because it's not a pretty picture, but he'll be brief.
Thank you, Joe.
Mayor Booker, members of the council, and honored guests, greatly appreciate this opportunity to share with you our experiences related to inspecting your bridges. Today I want to say thank you for doing the engineering approval for the improvements of your bridges. What I want you to think about as I go through this presentation is what we don't have identified is the funding mechanism to actually do the work of replacement and construction. Joe?
Yep.
There we go. Thank you very much. My background began over 30 years in the ODOT Bridge Division. So I had over 30 years working for DOT, OTA, and for the last 4 years, I've worked for the firm Lochner's, serving the city of Lawton related to your bridge inspections. Also with me today is Evan Ledwick. He's got 14 years as being our lead bridge designer. How did we come to be in front of you today? Federal Highway wants bridge owners to be informed of their bridge conditions so that they can make informed decisions. So they fund the project. ODOT administers this contract. Joe Painter and his team have selected Lochner to provide this service the last several years. I serve as the program manager, and Evan Ledwick helps me with doing a lot of our bridge design work, and we have a production team that works with us. In general, when you think about bridges, bridges have a design life of 75 years. And the city of Lawton owns 93 bridges, and they're shown there on the map, distributed across the city. The unfortunate thing is your average bridge age is 49 years old, and each year you've gained 93 years of life toward increasing that 75-year bridge life. Your oldest bridge is 92 years old. It's right there just south of the mall at Southwest 2nd Street in New Moo Creek. You have 9 bridges currently older than that 75-year design life. 2 were rehabilitated in 63 and 77, roughly 50 years ago. Of those 9 bridges, 4 are structurally deficient, and of the remaining 5, 4 are at risk of becoming structurally deficient. I've been asked to real quickly go through pictures for 9 bridges. I'll start with the 11th Street. This is Bridge 1 and 2 over Wolf Creek and Wolf Creek Overflow. These are 90 years old and serve 3,500 vehicles a day on the south side of Lawton and is your primary access to the landfill south of town. We've recently had to lower the load rating on that bridge from 33 ton to the 13. You ask yourself why. I want to kind of give you a little history. 2 years ago, we had a beam in crushing. You can see that upper left photo. The lower flange of that beam should have been in the alignment of the red line. It had actually crushed and deflected along the blue line. Did an emergency project of $116,000 to repair just one single beam end. The problem is these 2 structures actually have a total of 60 beam ends. And when you do a bridge assessment on these 2 bridges, you quickly decide that it's time that the bridges need to be replaced. Doing emergency projects and repairs isn't serving the purpose you want. Moving to the 3rd and 4th bridge I want to talk about today is Cash Road over Wolf Creek. These 2 bridges are 57 years old. They serve 7,000 vehicles a day. And the limiting issue, as Joe spoke earlier, is the posting of 24 tons. This limits fire trucks and other commercial freight into serving your community. Right now, the plan is to do a bridge rehabilitation on this project. You can see in that lower left photo, bearing devices that are deteriorating and crushing. At the bridge abutments, you have exposed piling that are deteriorating that need to be repaired and protected. And then bridge joints over all these 2 items needs to be sealed and patched And ultimately, the load rating on the bridge needs to add structural elements to increase that load capacity. The fifth bridge I'll talk about is the 29th Street over the tributary to Raton Creek in the Coronado Estates. This is the bridge that was just closed recently. It's a battery of pipes. You can see the bottom of the pipes have deteriorated to where they're no longer connected. The upper portion of the pipes have deflected, and just like the pop can, once you lose the shape of the can, it no longer has the capacity of when it was originally built and thus had to be closed. Bridges that you did not approve for the engineering portion are the next four. We'll start with the alleyway between 8th Street and 9th Street over New Creek. In the lower left photo, you can see it's currently posted 12 tons. The deck has deteriorated enough that it's scaled and such that you can even see the beam lines in the bridge deck. There's one beam in that is actually not supported by the pier wall. And things to notice about that pier wall, there's no rebar exposed. The steel's not there. So this basically is a bridge that just has advanced deterioration, and a plan needs to be developed. The 7th and 8th bridge I wanted to talk about is the Gore Boulevard over East Cache Creek. These are actually built at two different times. One is 51 years old, the other is 42 years old. They serve roughly 6,300 vehicles a day. If you look at that bottom left picture, you have what's a bridge abutment. Underneath that bridge abutment is steel I-shaped or H-shaped piles. And that second picture there shows those piles underneath that abutment. This is what's actually holding up the bridge. You can see that I-shape is greatly deteriorated and decayed. It needs to be repaired and protected. The same thing could be said for the end of the beams and then the pedestals supporting those beams. The last bridge I want to speak about is Rogers Lane over the west branch of Wolf Creek. This one's a 29-year-old bridge that serves roughly 100 cars a day. Unfortunately, it looks like when the bridge was built, the span was a little bit undersized. When the water comes through scouring, you can see it starts washing out and you're losing material underneath your abutments. So in general, if I just talk about the rest of your bridge inventory, if you look at the top three bridges, all three are rigid frame structures that have very shallow foundations. In fact, that bottom floor is the bottom of your foundation. It's roughly 1 foot thick. The problem with these structures, if the water ever starts piping and flowing underneath these boxes, it washes away all the material that supports the boxes. And this is the number one method that all these bridge rigid frames fail. And then just the lower three pictures are random pictures of other deterioration in your bridge network. And remember, you have a total of 93 bridges as a bridge owner. You look at history, what your current bridge inventory is, a snapshot in time. You can see from the 30s to the 90s, you roughly have built 10 to 20 bridges a year. Unfortunately, you look at the last 20 years, only 8 bridges have been built. And that's one of the reasons I've been asked to come forward, is to try to emphasize the need to identify funding sources for bridges. With the absence of finding that funding source, you can see in just 20 years, you'll have 35 bridges over that age of 75 years. It definitely emphasizes a need, a call to action. You're not alone. The city of Lawton is not isolated in this. This is common amongst many cities across the state. Even ODOT had this same situation 20 years ago. In 2004, ODOT had almost 1,200 bridges that were structurally deficient, and that was out of 6,000, so 1 out of every 5 bridges was structurally deficient. And when it comes to infrastructure, things aren't cheap, so it requires a consistent, focused effort. For ODOT, it took the focus of 3 different governors, the legislative support, and ODOT implementing a bridge management program. And you can see in that lower right, Oklahoma DOT moved the state highway system from 47th in the nation to 5th in the nation. So it can be done, but it requires focused effort. With that, we'll turn control over to you, Mr. Mayor, to allow any questions if you wish.
So are we hiring Lochner to put together a bridge plan or assess all of our bridges further, or what?
Not yet. We're just working on those bridges, the 11th Street Cache and the 29th Street Bridge. This was to let you know that we plan on coming back with a proposal that we need to somehow come up with some bridge, regular bridge funding to do regular maintenance on these out
Time
years.
to pay the piper, isn't it? We can't kick the can down the road any further. Okay, pretty clear. Anybody have any comments or questions? Not pretty, but we got to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No action. Any comments, City Manager?
Mayor, I think we've talked about this before. As we plan future capital budgets, as we've mentioned in the past, deferred maintenance becomes capital projects later. And here we are.
Okay, 27. Consider adopting an ordinance amending personnel policies and procedures, section 17-29202, 203, 208, and 215, Division 1729, Article 17-2, Chapter 17, Lawton City Code 2015, by reorganizing the Employee Advisory Committee membership, reducing the elected groups to 8 groups, and increasing the at-large members to 3, by rewording member to members as related to at-large positions, by scheduling terms of office, end dates for current, by rescheduling terms of office end dates for current Employee Advisory Committee members based on the reorganization of membership, and by adding language pertaining to items deemed to have been submitted to the Employee Advisory Committee for consideration, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. Craig.
Good afternoon and long time no see, all of you. We're bringing this change to the code that relates to the Employee Advisory Committee, mainly because the Employee Advisory Committee has been having a hard time getting a quorum there. So the EAC decided that they wanted to not change the number of members, but they wanted to change the number of groups from 10 groups to 8 groups, employee groups, and then increase the number of at-large members from 1 to 3. They think that will get them a better chance of getting more members onto the EAC. So that's what that is. It also brings, the last part of this also brings a new section of the code. Right now, anything that we bring to the council that relates to Chapter 17 has to go through the EAC first. Well, if we go 2 or 3 months without having a quorum at a meeting, that kind of puts some of the things that we need on the back burners. So what we did is we added the new section of this, and the EAC agreed with it, that if we put something on the agenda for the EAC for a special meeting or a regular meeting, and they fail to have a quorum, that we can go ahead and bring that to the council.
Questions? Discussion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Craig, and these committees are frustrated about not being able to take care of this, so they kind of initiated wanting something changed in that
Yes,
to
sir.
help with their quorum.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we through with discussion? If so, I move that we accept that.
Okay, we have a motion for approval.
Second.
And we have a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Oh, read the ordinance.
I'm cold and I'm ready to go home.
Hold on.
An ordinance amending personnel policies and procedures, section 17-29202, 203, 208, and 215, Division 1729, Article 17.2, Chapter 17, Lawton City Code 2015, by reorganizing the Employee Advisory Committee membership, reducing the elected groups to 8 groups, and increasing the at-large members to 3, by rewording member to members as related to at-large positions, by rescheduling terms of office, end dates for current employee advisory committee, members based on the reorganization of membership, and by adding language pertaining to items deemed to have been submitted to the employee advisory committee for consideration, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
No,
Please vote.
I don't want to talk.
I've got 3 votes. There's 5. Motion carries 5-0. Brings up item number 28. Consider approving an ordinance pertaining to Chapter 19, Recreation, specifically Article 19.3, Fishing, and Article 19.4, Hunting, to reflect recent changes made to the fee schedule, establishing a 5-year and lifetime hunting, fishing, and combination hunting and fishing permit, amending the application rules for the city's annual elk hunt, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date. Christine.
Good evening. I don't get to say that very often. This request has come from Councilman Harris. He would like to request a 5-year and lifetime possibility for a hunting fishing license and a combination of both hunting and fishing. The state has something like this similar. They have lifetime, and so this is just giving our citizens another option for licensing on our property. There are some few changes in here regarding elk hunting, kind of streamlining the process. One of the big things is right now it says that you are only ineligible to apply for elk hunt if you have a successful hunt. And so we have received complaints over the years that the same people keep getting drawn over and over again. So we would propose addressing this code to say if you're drawn for the elk hunt, no matter if you're a successful hunt or not, you're ineligible to be drawn again for 3 years, to try to open up the possibility of more people having the opportunity to hunt for elk. Any specific questions anyone has?
No questions?
Yeah, a little bit to that, Mayor. I think this is important in code change in relation to fenced-off hunting. I mean, i.e. contained ranch-style hunting. It is extremely expensive and probably well out of the hands of most average citizens at the cost of some of these hunts. So this is a very affordable way to do that, and it spreads out the ability for many different people to gain a license.
Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
I move to approve the ordinance, waive the reading of the ordinance, and read the title only as a substitute.
Thank you. Read the title, please.
An ordinance pertaining to recreation by amending sections 19.3.302, 19.3.303, 19.3.305 through 19.3.306, 19.3.308, and 19.3.13, Article 19.3, and amending sections 19.4.401 through 19.4.402, 19.4.407, and 19.4.411, Article 19.4, Chapter 19, Lawton City Code 2015, by amending Article 19.3, Fishing, and Article 19.4, Hunting, to reflect changes in the fee schedule, establishing a 5-year and lifetime fishing permit, establishing a fishing and hunting permit, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Moving us to item 29, consider approving an ordinance pertaining to Chapter 19 Recreation, specifically Article 19.2 Water Sports and Boating, by establishing a 3-day vessel permit and regulations for canoes and paddle boats, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date. Christine.
This is just a little bit of housekeeping mostly. The one big thing is when we did the fee schedule, we eliminated daily boat permits. It's just way too encumbersome for staff, and the cost just doesn't outweigh. So only left with the option of an annual permit. staff had some comments, and we went back and did a 3-day boat type permit. So if someone wanted to come down here for a weekend, they would have the option to get a 3-day permit, which would be a weekend type permit versus getting an annual license for their boat. Rest of this is really housekeeping. The verbiage between license and permits, we're just cleaning that up a little bit. And we did want to address the paddle boats, canoes, kayaks type thing, and to say that they are not required a permit. They're not considered a vessel in most of these sections of city code. They are required or are going to be a vessel when it comes to some of the life safety, the wearing your life vest, stuff like that. But for the most part, they would not be considered a vessel and therefore would not require a permit.
Council?
I move to approve the ordinance, waive the reading of the ordinance, and read the title only.
Oh, a motion and a second. Please read the title.
An ordinance pertaining to recreation by amending sections 19.3.302, 19.3.303, 19.3.305 through 19.3.306, 19.3.308, and 19.3.313, Article 19.3, and amending sections 19.4.401 through 19.4.402, 19.4.407, and 19.4.411, Article 19.4, Chapter 19, Lawton City Code 2015, by amending Article 19.3, fishing, and Article 19.4, hunting, to reflect the changes made recently in the fee schedule, establishing a 5-year and lifetime fishing permit, establishing a 5-year and lifetime hunting permit, and establishing a combination fishing and hunting, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Moving us to item number 30. And I want to compliment before I forget, this meeting did not last 5 hours. A direct response of council lack of discussion. Consider approving a resolution amending Appendix A, Schedule of Fees and Charges pertaining to Chapter 19, Recreation, specifically Article A19.2, Water Sports and Boating, Article A19.3, Fishing, and Article A19.4, Hunting. Christine.
This is pretty much a companion item to the previous two ordinances, stating or establishing fees for those licenses that was just approved. Do want to point out that the elk hunting fees were increased. So if anybody has any questions.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolution, waive the reading because you don't have to anyway.
Have a motion for approval. Do I have a second? We did have a second? Okay. Discussion or debate? Please vote. No, it's a resolution. Motion passes 5-0. That moves us to staff reports, and we only have one that we didn't strike. Receive an update on project EN 2004A, City Hall renovation.
So
Joe Painter.
I want to thank CMS Willowbrook and for waiting all this time. I hope they don't take it out on us on the next bid update that we get.
So we wanted to give you a quick update on City Hall. Scott Vaughn is our project manager, and he's going to give you a quick update on where we're at.
Good afternoon. And as the city manager mentioned earlier, CMS Willowbrook, our construction partners are here, Rick Watts, Christy Callens, and Eric Williams. If you have any really difficult questions, I'll ask you to ask them. But honestly, seriously, I hopefully can give you a brief update that'll be meaningful. In June, you authorized soliciting bids for the project that you awarded today, which was paving the parking lot over here on the west side of City Hall, as well as purchasing the HVAC units. Both items we felt were important to get moving at this time. 100% construction drawings have been submitted to licenses and permits. The design team has addressed the comments that licenses and permits had for the 95% drawings. And then we intend to have a team review of all the bid documents later this month, perhaps early next month if necessary. But basically we are moving forward with the project. And as you see on this slide, the good news on this particular item is that we originally estimated this part of the project to cost $1.1 million. It came in at about $192,000 less than that estimate. If we could go to the next slide, please. If you may recall, back in June, we talked about the total project cost estimate and where we were at the time. This is to give you an update on that. We actually are at about the same value that we were back in June, estimating about $7.4 million total for the project. That does include the base bid and all the alternate items that Mayor and Council authorized us to design back in June of 2021. The idea is that we would submit those out through the bidding process. When we bring those items back to Mayor and Council, you, of course, then would have that opportunity at that time to decide whether to award those items or to not award those items. And of course, if you were to award them, then you would need to have some idea of where the funding would come from. With that, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions if there are any. And again, like I said, if you have anything really difficult or anything I can't answer, CMS Willowbrook will be able to help us with that.
Okay, so our original, we had 6 million, which we know is not going to be enough. And we're still looking at the number you gave us in June of 7.4. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's correct, Mayor.
All right. Joe, you want to talk to us?
No.
Does anybody want to ask anybody any questions? I guess we like it. But I like that pen you have on too.
Mayor, I do have one question, if it pleases the council. Scott, so we've heard Rusty speak about 40% increase in cost for construction projects across his projects. Are we seeing similar numbers for this project?
Well, it's a little difficult to say for sure because CMS was not on board back when we got the original numbers from the architect in July of 2021. So it's a little difficult to say for sure. They could answer more, from my perspective it is. They could answer more, I think, aptly than I could because they are dealing with these things on a daily basis. So Eric or Rick or Krista, if any of the three of you could come up and give a better answer to that, I'd appreciate it.
I'm Eric Williams, estimator for CMS Willowbrook, dealing with these numbers every day, and these last couple years have been tough to try to keep up with all the increases that we've had. To answer your question, I don't know that we've seen 40%, but certainly 30% is probably pretty normal over that time span, which may be pretty close to what you're seeing here. But they did at least have the foresight to put in 20% contingency back in June of 21, which didn't quite cover all the increases. Excuse me. I think right now we're about 9.9% over that $6.7 million number that they had in June of 2021. But with the 20% contingency they had in there, that at least was able to make up, 2/3 of it.
So it's safe to say that everything across the board, construction-wise, is seeing some sort of increase, just maybe not as much on this project as we see in wastewater.
Right, and another one that helps this one, a lot of that steel has been a major one. It's almost doubled. We don't have a lot of steel on this project because it's interior renovation, so the finishes, flooring, painting, drywall, those things hadn't seen quite the increases that some of the structural items have.
And Mr. Manager, I have seen similar numbers in the water and wastewater industry. I do bid other projects, so yes, I've seen those numbers in that industry.
That's all the questions I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. And we did, by the way, I can't remember if I announced it, but we struck the FISTA report and we struck the finance report because of the length of the agenda, and they'll be moved to the next meeting. And I would like to get a report from the Planning and License and Permits Department, if we could, at the next meeting. With that, we've already done our executive session, so we move down there to the bottom called adjournment.
I would make a motion that we adjourn and everybody go vote if you haven't.
And do I have a second for that? And several seconds. Please call the roll.
Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Warren. Hankins. Hampton.